Hey, I'm Adam from La Dispute, and you're live in Limbo.
This is Live in Limbo, and I am Andreas Babiolakis, and with me I have Vass from La Dispute. How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, thank you. How's the tour going so far? Are you good?
It's been great. All the shows are awesome.
Oh yeah?
We've been playing the new songs. It feels really good. It's just been a good time. We haven't toured in a while either, so it's kind of nice to shake the dust off.
Now, Toronto was really close to your hometown of Michigan, so it's just like we've sold out, which I know in Michigan you've sold out like instantly as well. So is Toronto like a nice hotspot for you to like just hop over the border? Does it feel like home?
A little bit. It doesn't feel too different from home. It still feels welcoming enough. So yeah, it's always nice to come, and like, we've got some friends here, a couple. It's always helps, you know.
Perfect. Well, speaking of welcoming, Rooms on the House has done extremely well critically. It's gotten fantastic ratings across the board. Are you happy with the reception so far?
Yeah, it's not really something I think about when we were writing it or anything, and none of us really knew what was going to happen, you know, during the writing process, how it was going to end up, or how even later in the thought process, how people would react to it. But it's been really nice, obviously. It would have felt a bit strange for us to have finished it, been really proud of it, and then no one else really liked it. You kind of would have second-guessed yourself, but luckily that didn't happen. So
88 on Metacritic, that's pretty damn high.
yeah, that's some stuff I get to text my mom, and she'll be proud of me, you know.
There you go, and that's not just your only well-received album. You've had Wildlife as well, which has done extremely well. And it's a bit different, this new album, because Wildlife meandered a little bit through genre and its time length and everything. Rooms on the House is a lot more condensed and more personal. What was the approach to this? Was there any set goal in mind, or was it just a different change that you felt was right?
I think it happened very organically because we wrote the record in a cabin together. We've all moved from Grand Rapids to other places now, and so the only way we could all get together was to
Force ourselves to go into this space. And because of that, since we were in a smaller space, we had a constrained time. I think that led to maybe a more cohesive end product, where because it was all done at the same time in the same mood or whatever.
Right, so it's a lot more direct. So like everything's a lot more complete. Like not that you haven't told the story before, because it's La Dispute. Your music, it's not just about melody, but it's about creating an environment both lyrically and aesthetically. Speaking of which, how does that process come about? Do you make the music and the atmosphere first, and then the lyrics are matched, or do you have the lyrics first and then you try to match that mood and that setting of the story created with the music itself?
It's always changed a little bit. There's a lot of back and forth where sometimes we'll have some knowledge of what the song will be about, and then we'll write music to it. We'll have to tweak it to fit lyrics or whatever like that. So the musicians and lyricists go back and forth a lot of give and take to meet in the middle to have that end product that is what the songs that they are.
Well, everything just feels so complete, so it's a damn good end result, isn't it?
It feels good when it comes together, because sometimes, you know, if Jordan will tell me what the song's about, and it's kind of hard to come up with a score almost for a story that's not told yet.
Right.
And it's always a bit daunting, but that back and forth usually hammers out some of the bumps, and we end up in a place where everyone's happy. Sometimes it is kind of like that, where we'll get plot points almost to the story and then fill in the blanks.
Yeah, because La Dispute isn't so much about creating like a fun environment or whatever. It's about having these stories about these very personal convictions. So is a lot of that from like input from the band itself, or is it more than like just more like one person who has like the control of the lyrics? Or
yeah, Jordan, who's our singer, he writes all the lyrics, and a lot of it is drawn from his own experience.
Do you, because you don't write the lyrics yourself, do you find your own kind of like comfort with creating the music for this? Like you can relate to it, so thus you can let out any of those burdens that you have yourself, or is it something that you're kind of distant from?
No, I think I noticed it more when we did Wildlife, where I could relate a lot to the narrator, and thusly I could make music maybe more directly related to the emotions and stories that were being told. That relationship I have with, not just with Jordan, but the emotions that are being conveyed, it led to an easier process this time around when we were doing the record, that I could almost channel those feelings even if I wasn't presently having them, to let that influence the music, and then the music influence the vocals again.
But apart from emotional influence, what about musical influence? Is there anything that's come out recently, or even from way back when, that's been like a musical or a lyrical or just aesthetic influence for this new album?
Shoot, I almost want to ask the guys in the next room.
You could just bring them over, we could have more people.
I know they're doing interviews right now too, so I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
There's a graphic novel called Building Stories, and right now I can't think of the author, that's why I want to go ask him. But it's presented in this really strange way where it's stories about all these people that live in the same building, but maybe one person's story will be told in like a children's book, one will be in like a wide format, like a newspaper style almost, and there's no chronology to it. You can read them in any sequence.
Right.
And which also came into play when we were laying out the record. A lot of the events happened not in chronological order.
Oh, of course.
That was a huge influence. We all read it, and I read it a few times in different orders, and you notice different things, or you get different results from it. And that was a really big part of us laying out the record the way we did, and that sort of thing. Personally, I've been listening to a lot of electronic music lately. I really like that new Tycho record that just came out.
Oh yeah.
And like the album Leaf has been a constant for me. Brad, our drummer, and I have been playing around recently with programming electronic stuff, and then playing organic instruments with that, kind of in the vein of those bands. Which hasn't worked its way into this band yet. I'm not sure how directly politically influenced any of our music is. Almost the more human element of things like that would work its way in, or be more prone to working its way in. Like when we were writing, it was last April, which is when the Boston Marathon bombings happened, which was 2 blocks away from my apartment. I live in Boston on the street where it happened, and so and we were in a cabin that didn't have TV or internet or anything, so I knew something happened, but I didn't know. I couldn't find things out the way that you used to. I could just look at my phone, but couldn't use my phone up there. So in that sense, like, obviously I was affected by that happening so close to where I live, and then had to go to band practice that day and write songs. So in a very indirect way, I think we're all always influenced by events, political or otherwise, the degree of which almost depends on how close the moment hits.
Right.
And actually Jordan and I spoke about it that day quite a bit, which ended up in a way working into the lyrics of the last track on Rooms of the House, called Objects in Space, where we talk about how items that otherwise would have no meaning on their own, but by their curation form this meaning. But specifically what I was talking about, that memorial, it was just some stuffed animals and running shoes and some other things, and then, all those things separately are just things, but together it was such an impactful moment for me. And now that I'm thinking about it, I guess it did influence it more than I thought it did.
I always wonder what that song title meant, because it was always interesting. That was the final song, and I would get there, and it's what is it? It's just so intriguing, and then the song would come on, and it's very, well, obviously it's poetic, as the entire album is, but it just feels so calming, but at the same time, it's got a little bit of a subtle unnerving feeling. So I'm guessing that's obviously from what happened in Boston.
I think that's that could be said about a lot of our band.
Right, of course.
There's almost a fake resolution, but there's always dissent somewhere.
For sure. Now, before we wrap things up, you say that there's like a fake resolution. Do you ever hope that there's like a full resolution, or do you think that that wouldn't lead the listener on to something that it's the sense of mystery? Do you think if once it's finite, that it's over?
I personally like ending with a question mark instead of with a period. If a record ends, I want to like sit there and be forced to think about it and kind of take it in.
Right.
And I think that's more engaging as a listener to do instead of have a record ending just carry on.
Exactly, being told what to feel, right?
Yeah. I think that interpretation is an important part of being any kind of artist. Letting the person take it and do what they will.
Where can we find you online, you and your bands?
We have a website. It's lawdisputmusic.com, and we're on Twitter. I think the handle is lawdisputeband.
And you can find me at livelimit.com. This is Vass from Disputes with the Rooms on the House. Fantastic album. You should check it out. Thank you very much.